Hi, this is Joy Robertson. As many of you know, I love food. I love finding new restaurants. I love trying new dishes. And most of all, I love talking to the many great restaurateurs and entrepreneurs we have here in the Ozarks and beyond. I love hearing their stories, and that's what this podcast is all about, learning more about them and their journey. So join me as we savor the Ozarks. Okay, everybody, if it sounds a little bit lively where I am right now, it's because I am sitting at Big Momma's on historic Commercial Street. Let me just say, it's the middle of a weekday, the middle of an afternoon, and the place is hopping, as it almost always is. And the man who brought it here, Lyle Foster, is sitting right in front of me. Lyle, how's it going?
Welcome to Big Momma's Coffee and Espresso Bar, live from the north side of this great city called Springfield, Mo, down here in the Ozarks, slinging some coffee, making amazing sandwiches, the best home-baked scratch kitchen pastries, scones, muffins, frittatas, and we make our own chicken salad, we make a focaccia bread, we make homemade soups. That's how it's going. It is off the chain.
This is what happens when you sit across the table from Lyle. I love this guy. I love it, love it, love it. I know your story, but not everybody in the listening audience knows your story of how you ended up in Springfield, Missouri. Tell me where you came from and how we wound up on C Street for all these years.
All right, Joy, you're messing in my Kool-Aid, but you're one of those special people that I don't mind stirring the Kool-Aid. But I came from the great city of Chicago, South Side, and it was really inadvertently. I mean, it's really one of those things that I call divine okie dokes, because it definitely was not being planned at all. But my daughter, my lovely pumpkin, who's of course a grown woman now, she played for a college in Texas, in Austin, Texas, and they were playing a game at Drury.
Basketball,
Women's basketball, the best. And they had a little series at Rockhurst in Kansas City, and then they were coming to Drury in Springfield. And as a good basketball dad, I think I have a T-shirt that says "Girl Dad." As a good girl dad, I was like, "Oh, let me come down and see. You know, it's closer than Texas. Let me come down and see my pumpkin play ball." So I came down on the Thursday, and then the game was Thursday night, and then on Friday I came to beautiful Springfield. I think I got a speeding ticket on my way to Springfield from Kansas City, if I remember correctly. And in between the games, I've always loved exploring communities. Part of my background is urban studies, urban planning. And I'm like, let me discover this town where the game is. And somehow along the way, I discovered historic Commercial Street. And I fell in love with the architecture, the history. I thought the people were very nice. The cost of living was cheaper. But at the time, I was just simply looking for perhaps an investment property. And then sometimes, and for those listening, don't take this in an insulting way, but I sometimes hear people saying Springfield slowly sucked or pulled them in. And then I slowly got pulled into the vortex. I was thinking investment property, but literally, Joy, one morning I popped out of bed in Chicago and said, a coffee shop, Big Momma's Coffee Bar. And then I slowly realized, well, it's probably hard to run a business from Chicago. But this was over a 2-year period. The building that I was able to, select, purchase was condemned. No back wall on 3 floors. And at this time, Commercial Street was in a very different point of its history. It was a little helter-skelter.
Yeah. I remember very much when I came to town, it was just not what it is today, even close.
Yeah, and so you have to have a little bit of, we're not supposed to use the word crazy anymore, but you have to be a little bit eccentric to even see that this building had a possibility. But somehow I saw that this building could be rebuilt. For those of you who come from any kind of a faith perspective, I received the word of Nehemiah to rebuild and restore the walls of the city. And I remember that very, very clearly, and I felt this was part of the rebuilding process of Commercial Street. I really, believe it or not, had a clear sense of what this beautiful, architecturally significant, historic part of our city could become, and I felt called to be a part of it. Does that answer your question?
That is a very good, at least a very, very good start to an answer to the question. Did you say what year it was?
No, I did not, but it was about 2004.
Yeah, okay.
20 years ago.
Oh my goodness, it's been a minute. It really has.
This story starts 20 years ago, 4 score.
But coffee shop, though, I remember you telling me something about you thought that a coffee shop has that way of bringing people together, get to know each other, sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a bite to eat, spend time together. And I would say you succeeded grandly.
Well, Joy, you really have a great memory. Today, people don't realize, particularly in the history of Springfield, there was a time coffee shops meant going anywhere and getting something that was partly water and partly mud. But there's really been a complete, what I would call, renaissance in terms of the whole specialty coffee shop experience in our nation. Europeans have done this for, a long, long time. But Howard Schultz, who actually was the founder, if you will, of Starbucks, was fascinated with European culture and this notion of what's called the third place. We spend our time at home, we spend our time at the job, and then there's a third place. And he longed to see people in the United States make coffee shops the third place. In Europe, people go get coffee, espresso, before work, morning break, lunchtime, afternoon break, and on their way home. And he wanted coffee shops to be literally gathering places. I resonated with that. I actually had the chance to go to Italy, and I actually studied coffee culture. I went to coffee college, if you will, and I was fascinated with what coffee shops could be. And for me, because I'm a sociologist by training, I saw coffee shops as a place for community gathering spaces, and I thought there was an important foundational piece to build community. And really, no credit to me, but I think our community in Springfield has responded, not only to Big Momma's, but to other places as well that are, the growing coffee shop culture. And I feel like this is probably one of the most diverse and inclusive places in town because you can see anybody here, from somebody running for governor, to somebody who's a state rep, to somebody who's an elected official, to somebody perhaps who last night wasn't sure where they even slept, and we're all in this same space. And I love sometimes coming in thinking I'm going to be here for 15 minutes, and an hour later I'm talking from one conversation to another. And it just touches me every time I see a person in here that's engaged in conversation. We've had weddings here, we've had memorial services, we've had baby showers, we've had several places of faith actually birth here. We've had concerts here, we've had theaters here. I just love it all. It's a gathering space, yes.
It is. I've been here for some theatrical performances, and it's just great. You started as a coffee shop. Did you have food to begin with, or was it just coffee? Now, that's going back to where I just don't remember.
Joy, you really are pulling up on all the buttons. We kind of had a little bit of a what I would say, highbrow approach at first. We wanted to be gourmet coffee, specialty drinks, the lattes, the macchiatos, the mochas, and all of these really Americano, etc. But probably about 2 or 3 months into it, and homemade pastries, delicious pastries. But a couple of months into this, I spoke to Joe, the one and only Joe Terry, who was with us from the beginning.
Sometimes known as Ugly Joe, by the way. I don't think he's ugly, but that was not my little moniker for him at all.
We have a coffee brew named Ugly Joe, and with his permission, with a little curl of lock of hair sticking out. And I noticed at this time, it's hard for people to imagine today, but between Kansas Expressway, National Avenue, literally Kearney and Chester Expressway, that was probably a total of one place that provided what I would call lunch food, and that was the Sonic. There really weren't sandwich shops. And we said, let's try a few sandwiches. So we literally sat in the back of the store, brainstormed with 1 or 2 other employees at the time, and came up with a creative little menu of little sandwiches we wanted to try. And I have to say, immediately, people responded to having a place close by that they could find sandwiches. We had people from places they could walk a short drive. Sure. And we said, let's do this thing called sandwiches. And then we've slowly expanded that sandwich menu. And one day, I'll never forget, Joe Terry said, hey, let's try to do a few of these on focaccia bread. I almost said, what is that, Joe? But it's a homemade, amazing bread that we make here in the ovens of Big Momma's Monday through Friday. And it still is one of my favorite things on earth to eat.
And if the name Joe Terry sounds familiar to some of you in the audience, musician with the band, The Skeletons. Man, I'm good.
And he hosts a trivia night at Q in the Tech on Wednesday night. That's the blast. He's got a complete following, and he dons all kind of hats and suits that will just make you fall out of your chair.
And Q&Oteca, by the way, is your wine bar across the street, on the other side of the street.
Wine Bar Event Center. We're still working on it, but yes, I love the place. The ambiance is amazing, and it's a nice little hidden gem in the Commercial Street Business District.
It is, and I know you do live music there. I've been there for community events before. It's not entirely unlike this, but with wine, which is just fantastic. And so Joe...
Political fundraisers.
Gotcha.
Which we love.
Yes. Well, I mean, my hat's off to you for all you've done here, but when you mentioned the sandwiches, the one that pops out at me, and having not looked at your menu in a few minutes, but they have a meaningful title to them. For example, the Drury Lane. Did you come up with the Drury Lane?
We came up with all of our meaningful titles. In fact, most of our sandwiches have a history behind them. The Jacqueline, which is our favorite sandwich by customer selection, is actually named in honor of my mother, who was a cook. She might not have been a great cook. My aunt was that great cook, big mama figure, if you will. But she loved and appreciated good food and taught us how to love and appreciate. So that's in her honor. And I'm always thrilled that it's such a popular sandwich. But yes, Drury Lane is for that precious little street on Drury University's campus. The Juliet was named in honor of Juliet Mee, who had the massage school. So we felt health and wellness, and Juliet and a vegetarian sandwich all go together. The barbershop was named for a local barber on the street who actually said, "Hey, Mr. Lyle, when you open up that coffee shop," because we had to sign up for a year before we opened, he said, "How about a ham sandwich?" And I was just laughing, "Sure, brother, sure." He said, no. And so he kept needling me. So we finally said the ham sandwich is going to be called the barbershop. The Jefferson is for Jefferson Street, Jefferson Avenue. So a lot of this was landmarks. The Hobo Alley, which was our peanut butter, PB&J, was not really meant to be in any kind of insulting and negative way, but actually honoring and respecting our train culture and the fact that we still have people who do hop the trains. It's a fascinating piece of Americana, if you will, and we wanted to give a shout out to that. So yeah, a lot of our sandwiches certainly speak to local North Side culture or Springfield history in particular.
Well, and myself, when my husband and I moved here in 97, we've lived on the north side ever since we got to town. So this means a lot to me because I've spent a lot of time here to come and meet people, have meetings, just bring my laptop in and do some work. At one time, you had a loft upstairs. Do you still have that?
Well, I don't live. There's still lofts upstairs, but at one time, Lyle lived in one of the lofts. I've always loved the loft living. I wanted to experience it, and I still think lofts are amazing. I think in Commercial Street now we've almost got 60 different lofts. A number of them are Airbnbs, but it started getting to the point where somebody would come in and says, "Lyle around?" and say, "Yeah, he's upstairs. Let me call him." So it was becoming hard to separate the store from me, from home, from a nap, from a rest, from whatever. So I had to move a few blocks away. but
You're never off the clock if you're in the same building.
Well, exactly. But that certainly was a really fun part. All the people in the loft, we just got along so well together. It was almost like a Cheers kind of experience. We had our doors open. We had Tuesday night meals with each person. We go in and watch each other's televisions and programs. We even got food out each other's refrigerators. Don't tell anybody that.
I won't say a word. Your secret's safe with me. And I do remember also when really the front part of the building that faces Commercial Street was, as I recall it anyway, Lyle, was the only part that was really open. But you and I are sitting in the back now. You've got a whole bunch of tables back here. And like I said, it's just hopping. There's some parking along the way back here. So you've expanded some over the years.
Yeah, we certainly responded to that. And people actually can even rent the back part. We call this the back porch. And we call the front part with the chandeliers the front parlor. Again, taking on that theme of Big Mama's house. And the back porch is where you can kind of maybe tell some stories and gossip a little bit and just kind of get a little folksy. The front is where we pretend we're in a very sophisticated coffee shop in a town called Springfield. So we try to be flexible and have different experiences for different folks.
What has it been like for you to watch C Street grow and evolve over the years since you got here? It's a different place than it was.
It is. And I mean, some of that is rewarding. It's also every now and then frustrating, and only frustrating in the fact that life happens. We had the recession of 2007, 2008, which was very painful, and I don't say that from a trite place because I know many people suffered from that. Many people lost investments, etc. Then, of course, we had this thing called the pandemic. And I only cite that to say I think Commercial Street's redevelopment and this part of its history might be even further along if it had not been for those very significant events. But I think we're moving forward. We're very excited. We're getting a new building, getting ready to break ground for a new affordable housing project, which is going to be some of the first new construction that I've heard of on the street in decades, and even in the parts of the north side in decades. Very excited. We've had a number of amazing new businesses come, and businesses continue to come. We have what we call International Row. We have restaurants from about 7 or 8 different international cuisines, and they're all quite delicious, delicioso. And so I really, some of the lofts are just drop dead, breathtakingly gorgeous. So I think for a group of people, and particularly most of this has been local entrepreneurs. We didn't have any high-flying developers with, millions of dollars in their pocket. Most of the buildings that have been redeveloped with love, with people's life savings, with people's loans, and just a lot of heart and a lot of passion and belief. And so it's very significant to us when people support Commercial Street. All of our businesses are locally owned. Many times you actually see the owner, the proprietor, if you will, behind the counter, sitting in the back row, sitting in that chair somewhere. You have a complaint, you can actually speak to them. We don't have a corporate office in Chicago or Seattle or LA. The corporate office is right here on the north side, and that's powerful. I mean, I don't want to get sentimental, Joy, but when I think about Espresso chocolate, for example, and you can go to stores in other parts of the country and you'll actually see Espresso chocolate at the counter. You're like, that was made on Commercial Street. And it just kind of just blows you away to think, wow, these little entrepreneurs here have been so passionate and look what they've built. I don't think we always, and when I say we, I mean the collective, we get enough credit for what has been poured into this particular part of Springfield to be what we have done today, oftentimes without a lot of support.
It's funny you should say that. I need to get Sean Eskenazi on this podcast, but 16, 18 years ago at least, I was with a friend in Seattle in a coffee shop, and I went up to pay for my coffee, and there was an Eskenazi chocolate display, and that's when I realized, wow, this is a thing. Springfield, Missouri is on the map again because I'm in Seattle, and there's Sean Eskenazi's chocolate sitting right there. You're right.
Isn't that amazing? And an interesting factoid, Joy, that first Friday in May, and I believe it was 2007, Sean Eskenazi's chocolate, Lindbergh's, the next iteration of Lindbergh's bar, and then there was one other store that was a glass-making kind of boutique place, Big Momma's. We all opened on the same first Friday, and you know what? 3 of us are still here, and I think for business, what I would call business continuation, that's absolutely remarkable. So Sean and I are like business brothers because we and he renovated a building that was falling apart, and I was able to work on it. I didn't know what I was doing, but we got it renovated. A building that was falling apart. You've got to have either just amazing clarity, or you just kind of like didn't know what you were doing to just think that these things were even possible. But I think with goodwill, with a lot of stick-to-itiveness, we've seen some really cool things happen. And we love our festivals. We love our events. There is just so much energy and passion poured into Commercial Street that is, frankly, to me, amazing.
I spend a lot of time up here. Like I said, I'm a North Sider, but I love everything about the street. And you're right. I might walk into another store and see Lyle Foster sitting in there hanging out with the owner of that store, and then I'll see somebody else I know that owns a shop running across the street to tend to their shop or somebody else's. It's like a family up here. Question for you. Do you cook?
Oh, I do cook, but I don't have time to cook much. I can make a mean peach cobbler.
Ooh, okay.
I can make some cornbread. I can make some amazing black-eyed peas and collard greens. Most of my culinary expertise was probably in my Southern tradition. And then I'll tell you one secret. My former wife, who unfortunately passed during COVID, et cetera, that was just very, 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 very sad. She was a trained chef. So I learned a lot by osmosis. I learned a lot by watching her, by listening to her. She actually was such a great cook, the stuff I didn't even like, I'm telling you the God honest truth, Joy. Foods I didn't even like. She made me like just because how she prepared them. So to this day, my favorite meal is what she cooked. You could offer me a $400 steak. I would take what she made over that.
Well, I always like to ask people what they like to eat, what are their favorite things. But, you are very community involved. Yet I really don't see you out all that much unless I'm on C Street. What do you do when you're not working? Do you ever stop working?
I party like a rock star.
Boy, that's how you do it.
No. Well, of course, I teach at the university.
Yes.
And I'm just very community driven. I do go to a personal trainer to try to work on trying to keep the body moving. I do like to travel. But really, a lot of my passion is just supporting what we do. One of the things that's funny about Commercial Street is that the businesses support each other. And so my favorite place to be in our city is on Commercial Street. And yes, I do go to other venues and other places occasionally. But a lot of my heart, a lot of my passion is just simply within the business itself. I'm very excited about the possibilities. I've got 2 adult kids. I love spending time with them. They both moved out of Springfield. And that causes me to want to see them and be with them. So those things are very important to me as well. But no, I have a life outside, not much of a life outside of Big Mamas and the businesses, but the university certainly keeps me busy, and I love the students and trying to maybe pour a little bit into their life for who they can be and for when they're going to contribute back to our community as full-fledged citizen scholars, we like to say.
Remind us what you teach and where.
I teach sociology at Missouri State University. I'm considered a public sociologist, and one of my very passionate community projects has been the growth and the development of the Springfield Greene County African American Heritage Trail. We've got 8 trail markers up now, and we're working on getting about 3 more done. That is so cool, being able to tell the stories of what has happened in this community and many of the pioneers and many of the places that in many cases don't exist anymore, but what a powerful contribution they made to who and what Springfield is today.
A huge contribution, and so many places around town that saw things that no one would ever want to see and should never have happened, but it's part of the history, and you're here to help mark the trail, which I really, really admire that, because we have a lot to learn, and you're here to help teach that, so thank you for that.
And I honestly believe, and because sometimes people say, why do y'all want to bring all this stuff up again? Because we must learn from our past, because there are still things that we're repeating today. We must learn from our past so that we will never repeat that past and we can have a better community. I personally believe in the sanctity of humanity, and my heart is how do we make sure that we have a really responsive, collaborative community. Unfortunately, we're not in that day. I remember growing up in Virginia as a little kid. It sounds really crazy today, Joy, but I know a lot of people in the Ozarks have had similar experiences. We didn't lock our doors. We would come home from going somewhere, and literally there would be food on our kitchen table that a neighbor would just say, hey, Jack, in my mother's name, you weren't home, but we had some corn, we had some tomatoes, we had some lima beans, and they just leave a little note on the table. Now we're so locked in our house, we can't get out if we have to get out because we're just between security alarms and Alexa and everything is locked up, and we don't even know who our neighbors are. And I realize we're not going back to that again, but I think we can be civil, we can be respectful. We can learn and honor. So I have just been fascinated as a relatively newcomer about the very powerful and beautiful and rich history of this community. And we want to share that so that our young adults can know what happened here. It's significant that the Trail of Tears took place in Greene County. I want people to think about what that journey was like for indigenous Native people who were moved from their homelands, and they walk through Greene County. I don't take that lightly. Right. I don't take these events. I say, how do I learn from that so that I can honor and uplift my brothers and my sisters throughout this community?
There's a lot of history here, and it would behoove all of us to pay more attention to it. One quick question that popped into my head. Your daughter who came here to play basketball, do you have a menu item named for her? Because this is kind of all her fault, right? In a good way.
Well, her nickname is Pumpkin, so all that stuff you see, which I know is a flavor, but when I say pumpkin spice latte, I'm thinking Leah Leah spice latte. So secretly, she's all about pumpkin drinks.
Okay, good to know. I just had to ask. Well, Lyle Foster, thank you for spending time with me and doing so much for Commercial Street and bringing Big Mamas to the people. Again, I mean, look around you. Holy cow, there are people everywhere, and it's the middle of a work day. So, you either better go get busy in the kitchen or get the heck out of here, because you're never going to get out.
Well, I've got my mixed berry scone, which I'm about to take with me to my next appointment. But Joy, it's actually just super fun talking to you. And if I can, I would just like to let our community know that we don't take for granted your support. I mean, I found out later people had a bet that we'd be open for 30 days. And, I am just simply amazed every day that people come in this door. I mean, I know it sounds very trite, but I am so thankful and I'm so amazed that people trust us with their experience of having a good cup of coffee or a sandwich or a pastry. That means more than you'll ever know to me, and I'm eternally grateful for that. We're open 7 days a week. Sundays we close at 6, other days we close at 8. Believe it or not, before the pandemic, we were closing at 10 o'clock every night, because that was also part of our contribution to the community, to be a place that was open, to be a place that people could come at many different times. And believe it or not, Joy, even when we had that recession and during the pandemic, people were very economically strapped, but sometimes I would see a couple come and get a brownie, and they each would have a cup of coffee, and they would split that. And it warmed my heart to realize they could still go out. And maybe they weren't getting a steak dinner, but they still had that time to just spend together, even though financially challenged. And I'm happy that we were able to be a part of that. So thank you, Springfield. Thank you, Ozarks. We love you.
Oh, thank you for making it happen. Lyle Foster, you are the man. Thanks so much.
I'm just a pilgrim traveling. No, thank you, Joy. I just love talking to you. You are so amazing.
I love you back.
Amen. I love you more.